I'd like to share with you a great story from a client that is regarding a topic that I get regularly in my inbox under comments regarding blended families. And it's my hope that what I share with him is a help to you the way it was a blessing to him. 32 years old. His wife is 31. They have been married for 4 years. They have a 7 and an 8-year-old. He has a 7-year-old son. She has an 8-year-old daughter. And he says, Doc, I reached out because we have a really, I think, a really good relationship. But the only time we have major problems is when it comes to the kids. And I said, like, what are the problems? He said it pretty much gears around her allowing her daughter to do what she wants to do and kind of undermining my authority. And I said, what are the things you're trying, when you say authority, what are the things you're attempting to correct? I mean, are these reasonable things? He was like, yeah. I mean, he said she can be very attitudinal, the daughter, a little disrespectful for sure. And he says his wife doesn't do much about it. She attempts to say something, but it's not much of a help. I asked him a simple question. I said, when you all were dating, what was the conversation about setting priorities in your house as it relates to your spouse and your children? He said, we didn't really talk about that. I said, you all didn't talk about the kids? He said, we talked about the kids. He said, but honestly, Doc, I think we were so excited to just be together. We figured we would make it work, and we didn't really sit down and plan. I said, so I appreciate that feedback, because that is a common error. People think that because they're in love, they've checked all the boxes. And love is just one box of many you have to check before you decide you're going to marry someone. I said to him, the only way a blended family can work is if two things are in place. Now, before I give you the two things, let me give you, the viewer, this caveat. This video is only for people who are married and have blended families. Because the fact of the matter is, if you're living with someone and both of you have kids, it's going to be hard for you to establish what I'm going to talk about, because you really have no real foundation to establish it on. It doesn't shock me when children don't listen to boyfriends or don't listen to girlfriends. And some of you are going to understand that and others of you won't. But that doesn't shock me at all. Because in the boyfriend-girlfriend stage, you have no authority over someone else's kids. I'm going to be very clear with that. If you are somebody's boyfriend, you are somebody's girlfriend, you have no authority over their children. So I said to him, there are really only two ways a blended family can work. Number one is the natural parents have to set the tone with their own kids. So while you all are dating, and if marriage is the plan, or even if marriage isn't the plan, take the other person out of the equation. When you have children as a single parent, if your intention is to be married, if your intention is not to be married, whatever, you should be spending time raising your children. Because the fact is, if you get married, it's going to be too late for you to attempt to raise your child after you're married, when you have another whole person in your house, adult, and you have more children in that house that are not your own. And where so many blended families mess up is single people who have children are not being great parents in terms of raising and disciplining and leading their children, and they bring in another person, and it goes from bad to worse. So natural parents have to set the tone with their kids. And this is before you even think about getting married. Your children should know what respect looks like. Your children should know what listening to authority looks like. Your children should know what honoring you as a parent and another adult looks like. Because if that's the case, then bringing another adult in the house becomes a matter of them just learning to know one another and get along, versus them having to go through that. Oh, and by the way, they're disrespectful and rude, right? Or you've set no tone with them. So that's number one. Number two is this: when you decide to marry someone, You need to marry someone that you are willing to prioritize above your kids. Some people are not going to like what I'm going to say. But again, if you've got a spiritual foundation as a base for your relationship, this is going to make perfect sense. God, your spouse, and your children. Whether those children are natural or those children are stepchildren, your children are not the main priority over your spouse. Now, I know that's old fashioned. Some of you are going to hit me with that's old school. Some of you are going to hit me with, Doc, that's archaic. To each their own. But the fact of the matter is 90% of the chaos you see in blended families are because people get married and still treat their children like they're number one and their spouse like they're number two. And when I said that, he was like, Doc, you're spot on. He said, because I've said to her several times, you know, why do I feel like your kid and your daughter feels like your spouse? And she hit him with, well, that's my daughter. She was there before you and she's going to be there after you. That ain't a good answer, sis. It's not a good answer. And a lot of parents are guilty of saying the same thing. And here's the thing. I'm not going to argue with you. If that's your perspective, stay a single parent. Because if you're going to have real structure and order in your house, you need to think about who you're marrying and ask yourself, do I love them enough? Are they good enough? Are they respectful enough to my child? Are they great enough as a parent and great enough as a step parent for me to reprioritize them over my children? If the answer is no, you're choosing the wrong mate. It's that simple. Natural parents have to set the tone for their kids. And then kids have to be prioritized behind your spouse. And if that happens, things should be smooth sailing. I hope this makes sense. If it did, type church in the comments with 3 R's. And then remember, you've got 2 jobs. 1, be better today than what you were yesterday. And 2, don't forget what I told you.